Somewhere, right now, a 9-year-old is standing in a batter's box that cost his parents $400 a season just to let him stand in it. Somewhere else, a 31-year-old is standing in a different batter's box, and the contract that put him there is worth more than some small country's entire annual government budget. Same sport, same swing technically, same 6 ounces of cork and leather coming at him at roughly the same speed. The distance between those two batter's boxes isn't measured in miles, it's measured in dollars. And the gap is so enormous that walking it one paycheck at a time would outlast most careers before you got halfway there. Let's walk it anyway, level by level, and watch exactly where the money disappears and where it eventually turns into a number with 9 digits attached to it. Level 1. Little League. Here's the part nobody puts on a highlight reel. Your baseball career starts in the red, and it stays there for a very long time. Registration fees, a glove that costs more than your parents expected, cleats you'll outgrow before the season ends, a uniform you'll wear maybe 9 times total before it stops fitting. Add it up, and you're looking at somewhere between $300 and $800 a season, paid entirely by someone else, so that you can stand in the outfield picking at dandelions and occasionally sprinting 20 feet for a fly ball. You will not see a single dollar of income from this sport for at least another decade. Financially speaking, you are the single worst investment your family will make all year, and they will still drive you to practice 3 nights a week without ever once saying that number out loud in front of you. Nobody explains to a 9-year-old that this is already an economic decision, a bet placed early on a version of you that doesn't exist yet. It doesn't feel like a bet. It feels like a Saturday morning and a snack after the game. But stretch that $400 season across the roughly 10 years most serious players spend in organized youth ball before anyone with a stopwatch is legally allowed to notice them, and the number quietly climbs into 5 figures before a single professional team has ever heard your name. Nobody hands you a map of this walk either. You just get handed a glove, and everyone around you quietly agrees not to mention that the road ahead runs through more than a decade of pure financial loss before it has any real chance of turning into profit. And that for the overwhelming majority of kids who take that first step in a Little League batter's box, it never turns into profit at all. This is the story of the small percentage for whom it eventually does, told through the one number that follows every single stage of the sport, whether anyone's talking about it out loud or not: the paycheck, or the complete absence of one. Level 2. High School and Travel Ball. The number stops being quiet around age 14. This is where travel ball enters the picture. The weekend tournaments, the private hitting instructors, the showcase events where a scout might glance in your direction for 90 total seconds across an entire 10-hour day. Serious travel programs run families anywhere from a few $1,000s a year to well past $10,000 once you stack up tournament entry fees, hotel blocks, flights, bats that cost as much as a mortgage payment, and specialized coaching that's marketed as the one thing standing between you and getting noticed. This is also the level where the emotional math quietly stops matching the financial math. You're not thinking about the credit card statement your mom doesn't mention at dinner. You're thinking about the exit velocity number a stranger with a radar gun just wrote on a clipboard and didn't show you. Somewhere in a spreadsheet you will never personally see, your family has now spent the price of a reliable used car on a hobby that has, to this exact point, paid back precisely $0.00. And here's the part that stings in hindsight. None of that spending guarantees anything. Thousands of kids run through this exact same financial pipeline every single year. Most of them will never play a single inning of college baseball, let alone professional ball. The spreadsheet doesn't care how much was spent, only what the stopwatch eventually says. Level 3. College. College is where the math finally bends in your direction, just much slower than anyone warns you it will. Baseball scholarships are notoriously thin compared to football or basketball because NCAA rules cap the number of full scholarships a program can offer, and most coaches split that small pool across an entire 35-man roster. Translation? You might be starting at shortstop for a nationally ranked program on television and still be taking out loans for your fall semester, splitting a partial scholarship with 3 other guys on the roster who are also pretending, out loud, that it doesn't bother them. What you're actually earning here, instead of cash, is data. And this is where the sport quietly starts building a permanent record on you. Every swing gets logged into an exit velocity database. Every start gets charted pitch by pitch. Every summer league at-bat against wood bats gets cross-referenced against your metal bat numbers back on campus, because scouts know metal inflates everything and wood tells the truth. The number that actually matters at this level isn't your batting average on the scoreboard. It's the private number a scout is quietly building in a laptop 3 rows up in the stands. The number that determines a year or 2 from now either the size of the check that changes your entire financial trajectory or the complete absence of one. Level 4. The draft and the signing bonus. This is the first real inflection point in the story, and it is brutally, almost violently uneven. A first-round pick can walk out of the draft with a signing bonus in the millions before he has thrown a single professional pitch for money. A player picked in the 20th round, same date, same draft, might sign for a bonus so small it barely covers the cost of the equipment he's been buying since he was 9 years old. Same sport, same day. 2 completely different financial universes, and the gap between them is frequently decided by something as microscopic as 1/10 of a second on a stopwatch or 2 extra miles per hour on a radar gun reading. Here's the detail almost nobody outside the sport ever learns. For every player who signs for 6 or 7 figures on draft day and gets his name mentioned on a broadcast, dozens more sign that same week for the league-mandated minimum bonus, sometimes just a few $1,000s, and report immediately to a level of professional baseball that, on paper, still pays less per year than a part-time retail job back home. The signing, what the check actually looks like. Nobody shows you the paperwork part. There's no cinematic moment where a briefcase full of cash gets slid across a table. It's a scanned PDF, a wire transfer, and an agent's commission, usually somewhere around 5%, already carved out before the number ever hits your account. Then comes the part that surprises almost every drafted player the first time it happens. Taxes. Federal tax, state tax in whatever state the team is headquartered in, sometimes a second state's tax on top of that if you train somewhere else during the off-season. A signing bonus that sounded like a life-changing figure in a headline can shrink by nearly half before a single dollar of it ever touches a bank account you actually control. And here's the detail that turns the whole thing almost darkly funny in hindsight. A large percentage of that signing bonus, for a large percentage of drafted players, gets spent almost immediately. Not on anything extravagant, but on exactly the same categories of expense that already drained your family for the past decade. New equipment, a personal hitting coach for the winter, travel to a training facility in Florida or Arizona that isn't covered by the organization during the off-season months. The signing bonus that was supposed to feel like arrival money quietly turns into working capital for a job that at this exact point still pays you almost nothing during the actual season itself. Level 5. Rookie Ball and Single A. Welcome to the level where you are, officially, a professional athlete, and unofficially still completely broke. Standard pay at the complex and single A level runs somewhere around $700 to $900 a week during the season, which works out to roughly $26,000 to $28,000 once the newly mandated off-season training stipends get folded in. You now get free housing, which sounds like a perk until you learn why it exists. For decades, it didn't, and players used to sleep 4 to a 1-bedroom apartment on air mattresses just to make a season's rent work. The irony sits directly in front of you every single day in the mirror of a bus window at 2 a.m. somewhere in a state you didn't grow up in. You are, by definition, closer to the highest level of professional sports in America than almost anyone else alive on the planet. And you are also, by income, closer to the federal poverty line than most of the fans paying to watch you play tonight. Both of those facts are true, in the same body, in the same uniform, on the exact same night. Level 6, AA. The pay bumps again here, but so does the pressure, and the two increases do not move at the same speed. AA salaries land around $1,000 a week, roughly $30,000 for a full season, a genuine raise from where you started, but still nowhere close to what the phrase "professional athlete makes a stranger at a bar" assume you're earning when you tell them what you do for a living. This is also, statistically, the level where the sport does most of its quiet sorting. More prospects get filtered permanently out of the pipeline here than at any other single stop in the entire system, because AA pitching is widely considered the first real test of whether your swing actually holds up against advanced breaking balls, not just the mid-90s fastballs that got you drafted in the first place. You start doing a very specific kind of math in your head that nobody warned you about back in Little League. Not your batting average, but your age relative to your level. 23 years old in AA reads as perfectly on schedule. 27 years old in AA means the organization has quietly, silently stopped counting on you as a prospect, whether or not anyone in the front office has said a single word about it to your face yet. Level 7, AAA. One level away now, and the money finally starts to look like it belongs in the same sport as the majors, technically. Standard AAA pay sits at roughly $36,000 for the season under the current league minimums, though a player who's already been added to his organization's 40-man roster can be pulling in nearly double that figure by virtue of that single roster designation alone, regardless of how he's actually performing that week. That distinction, 40-man or not, is one of the largest hidden pay gaps anywhere in professional baseball, and it has almost nothing to do with talent. Every single day at this level operates under a phrase that sounds almost cruel once you fully understand what it actually means. You are one phone call away. Not one great month, not one hot series. One single phone call, arriving at almost any hour of the day or night, that can end an entire minor league existence and replace it with a completely different financial life within roughly 6 hours of connecting flights. Level 8. The call-up. The call rarely arrives the way the movies pretend it does. There's no dramatic locker room speech, no slow-motion walk to a podium. Usually it's a manager pulling you into a cramped office in the middle of a laundry cycle and quietly telling you to pack a bag for the airport tonight. And the financial jump that follows isn't gradual. It isn't a 10 or 20% raise. A player moving from a standard AAA salary to the major league minimum sees his pay multiply by roughly 20 times in a single afternoon for doing functionally the same job he did the day before at a slightly higher altitude and a slightly nicer stadium. Here's the number that stops most casual fans cold when they actually hear it. The current major league minimum sits at $780,000 a year, prorated by days of actual major league service time, which means even a brief 2-week cup of coffee in the big leagues can out-earn an entire full AAA season by a wide margin.
you spent a decade earning nothing at all, then years earning less per actual hour invested than minimum wage back home, and then in one single afternoon, the math flips so violently that it becomes almost impossible to explain to the 9-year-old version of yourself still standing in that $400 uniform. Some players get exactly 1 day of this before getting sent back down. The rules that govern that round trip are almost comically precise. A player can be optioned back to the minors and recalled up to a certain number of times per season before triggering extra procedural protections, and teams have openly built entire bullpen strategies around shuttling arms up and down that exact line, collecting the tax benefit of a fresh live arm without ever paying a full season's major league salary for it. You can experience the 20 times pay jump and then experience it reverse itself completely more than once in the same summer.
Level 9. The Established Veteran. Survive long enough at the top, and you eventually enter salary arbitration, then free agency, and the number stops being a fixed league minimum and starts becoming a genuine negotiation between two sides with very different incentives. The average major league salary now sits north of $5 million a year, nearly 7 times the league minimum, a figure that already felt unbelievable exactly 1 level ago. But averages hide a brutal structural detail underneath them. That number gets pulled sharply upward by a small group of the highest earners in the entire sport, while a large share of the actual active roster still lives much closer to that $780,000 floor than to the glossy average that gets quoted on television broadcasts. This is the level where the sport quietly splits every single career onto 2 completely different financial tracks, depending on a single organizational judgment call. Whether the front office believes you're worth locking up for the next several years, or worth keeping as cheap as legally possible for as long as team control still allows them to. Arbitration itself is its own strange courtroom. Your side and the team's side each submit a single number. A panel picks one of the two, not a number in between, not a compromise, just one side's figure or the other's, in full. You sit in a room, sometimes in the same building as people you'll be teammates with again the very next morning, while lawyers argue in front of a panel about whether you're actually good at your job, using your own statistics as evidence for and against you. Win, and your salary can jump by hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars in a single afternoon. Lose, and you're locked into the team's number for an entire additional season, still without the right to simply leave for a better offer somewhere else. The off-season you never see. Even at the top of the sport, the meter never fully stops running. Elite players routinely spend 6 figures a year of their own money on private trainers, nutritionists, biomechanics labs, and recovery technology that isn't covered by the team once the season officially ends. Because staying at this level costs almost as much as reaching it did in the first place. The gap between a good season and a career-threatening one is often decided in a facility nobody ever sees on television, months before a single regular season pitch is thrown, funded entirely out of pocket by the player himself. This is the detail that quietly breaks the illusion for most fans watching at home. The number on the contract was never the finish line. It was only the number that made it financially possible to keep paying for the exact same relentless maintenance that earned the contract in the first place. Except now, the stakes for failing to maintain it are measured in tens of millions of dollars instead of a single roster spot in rookie ball. Level 10. The contract that changes the sport itself. And then, for a genuinely tiny handful of players in any given era, the number stops resembling a salary altogether and starts resembling something closer to a corporate acquisition. Contracts in the modern game have now crossed into the $700 million range for a single player over a single deal, a figure so large that front offices have had to restructure how they even account for it internally, deferring enormous portions of the total payment for years, sometimes decades, just to make the numbers fit within the sport's own financial system. The 9-year-old standing in the $400 uniform and the player signing that 9-figure deal are on paper doing the exact same job. Same 90 feet between the bases, same 3 strikes, same 6 pounces of cork and leather. The only thing that actually changed, level by level, stopwatch reading by stopwatch reading, phone call by phone call, is the number of zeros now sitting next to his name on a contract. And almost nobody sitting in the stands that night ever sees the 20 invisible, unpaid years it quietly took to get there. Thanks for riding that whole ladder with us, top to bottom. If seeing the real numbers behind the uniform hit different, drop a like and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel more than you'd think. And if you're into the sport's hidden economics, go check out our last one, the video breaking down every role inside an MLB bullpen and the one job that got wiped out completely by a single rule change in a single winter.